her murder sparking a movement, a collective sense of grief, fear, and anger in women around the world.
In her kidnapping, and the case has sparked a global movement.
In this dreadful incident from the UK, a police officer caught a woman who was completely innocent, and what happened to her after that is perhaps everyone's worst nightmare. The video of what happened to her is extremely awful, so prepare yourself, okay? Sarah Everard, who lived in London, lived a fairly typical normal life. She had a job as a marketing executive and enjoyed hanging out with her boyfriend and friends. She was determined to maintain her normal life, even during the viral lockdowns in 2021. She went to see her friend in South London on March 3, 2021, and afterward decided to stroll home through a large neighborhood park. She was wise enough to stay on the roads and avoid walking inside the park itself. This is happening during the lockdowns once more. You might keep in mind that you should only spend an hour outside of your house. Aside from that, you weren't meant to interact with anyone unless they were also in that bubble. But Sarah undoubtedly believed that visiting her friend outside wouldn't be too risky. Sadly, a police officer stopped her because he thought she was breaking the law, and she was not the type of person to be tricked into getting into a car with a stranger, unless she was being arrested. Because most people know to flee when a frightened person approaches. You're even supposed to follow your gut instincts. It basically means that you should leave the scene as soon as something seems a little sketchy. But when a police officer informs you that you are being detained and must pass through them, your healthy instincts to flee will likely be overruled. Additionally, it's probably a good idea to act appropriately among police officers. So that's what happened to her. Video showing Sarah conversing with the police officer by the side of the road was captured by a bus camera. He seemed to be criticizing her for being outside. The two witnesses also observed that she had consented to go with him while presuming the worst about the situation. The witness also reasoned that she deserved it because she was being restrained with handcuffs. Sure, anyone would, right? Because maybe she's broken the law. Sarah's boyfriend, however, raised the alarm when she failed to return home the following day. Immediately, the search for Sarah began. She had appeared in numerous news reports. In the UK, this case received enormous attention. Sarah might yet show up alive and well. There was still some hope in that someone had to know where she was. They were going through every video recorded by cameras in the neighborhood, including those from doorbells and bus cameras. Do not forget that this occurred in the center of a large city. Almost everywhere you turn, a camera is around. However, there was still optimism that she would be discovered alive. Then on March 9th, police questioned a witness who had been spotted in the surrounding area. They located someone who had undoubtedly no business being there. The home of a different police officer who was out sick was visited by the police. Wayne Cousins was a somewhat typical family man with a wife and 2 kids, and he lived in Kent.
So we're here to talk to you about Sarah. I'm going to show you a picture. Do you know Sarah?
I don't know.
The inquiry that's been conducted so far has led us to come and speak to you about it and to see what you know about Sarah, okay? So, would you like to, do you know where Sarah is?
No.
Right. Okay.
But practically immediately as they arrived, they handcuffed him. Maybe they believed he might know where she was. You see, all the CCTV footage had pointed them in his way. He was the one who had stopped her that evening. On February 28th, Wayne had booked a hire car in his own name and kept his cell phone on him during his arrest of Sarah on March 3rd. That was their big clue. They knew he had to know something, and it's not at all suspicious that he deleted all of his phone's data 40 minutes before they got there, right? However, even a factory reset wasn't enough to hide his text or call history. When the police arrived, Wayne was put in handcuffs almost at once. I think they were pretty sure he was a person of interest, but they began to interview him just to be sure. And the entire footage comes from their little conversation in his living room. And well, let's just say that after admitting he had picked her up, Wayne started getting very creative with his responses.
Financial. And I've been lent on by, I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever. They told me, right, I need to go and pick up girls and give them to them. I said, what's happening? It then came through that they're going to harm my family, take them away, and they'll use them instead.
He was aware that the police had evidence against him and that he had a connection with Sarah. He therefore made an effort to pretend to be a victim, but nobody was actually fooled. Even if Wayne had also said that this enigmatic, frightening Eastern European group was threatening his family. Although the interviewers were paying attention to him, he was essentially digging himself a deeper hole at this point. He was caught up and sent to the police station. Police discovered a woman's remains in a pond and in some woodland the following day, on March 10th. She couldn't instantly be recognized because of how badly she had been burned. But guess who owned that portion of woodland? Of course, it belonged to the liar Wayne Couzens. A day later, dental records were used to identify the woman who was found in the pond. After the dishonest cop picked her up, it was clear that something terrible had been done to her. So what did he end up doing with her? How did she end up in this horrible place? It seems as though the Wayne cousins had been preparing a horrible act against a woman for a very long time. He had leased the white car on February 28th. He also informed his family on March 3rd that he would be working late. Then he went to London, made the necessary purchases for his night out, and began sulking around the city. He was specifically hunting for a single woman, somebody he could capture. Sarah was nearby, strolling around the park. She was in grave danger, but she didn't realize it. She was persuaded by Wayne that she was being legally arrested. He loaded her into his own car at 11:43 a.m. She was certainly totally panicked at this point, but there was nothing she could do to save herself. Not when she is wearing those handcuffs. Soon after, he molested her and used his belt from his police uniform to kill her. Then, at about 2 in the morning, this monster casually purchased a drink and some snacks at a gas station. By the time he had hidden the remains of poor Sarah on the woodland he owned in a refrigerator. He also attempted to conceal the phone by tossing it into a river. He also attempted to completely eliminate her on March 5th by purchasing some gasoline in a can. He was certain that it could hide his footprints.
Exactly where and when Couzens murdered Sarah, but they do know that for a while he stored her body here, hidden amongst this rubbish under a freezer.
Finally, he dumped what was left of poor Sarah in a nearby pond. A few days later, he even let his kids play in the woods next to where he had done all of this. Fortunately, this was never going to be enough to justify the vile actions he took that evening. None of this was extremely smart for someone whose duty it was to preserve the nation's diplomats and politicians. Nobody can yet comprehend how he got this far. He sadly believed he would get away with it. Prior to the trial hearings on July 8th, things were quite tense.
They lay down outside police headquarters and marched up towards number 10. The messages in the crowd were mixed, but yet again, there were protests on the streets where many women do not feel safe.
We're here for that! We deserve equality.
Do you feel this is still about Sarah Everard?
Yes, it did start out with Sarah, but it's so much more.
Sarah's family was receiving numerous tributes and expressions of sympathy. Kate Middleton also wrote Sarah's devastating family a letter expressing her sympathy. It was comforting to know that she shared our horror. In the weeks following the conclusion of the case, the London Metropolitan Police did not help their own cause. People who wanted to hold Virgil's and Sarah's honor were being split up by force by these individuals. A lot of these were female-only gatherings. Okay, so at that time the infection was still present. The Virgils were being held outside, though, and having even more angry police surrounding them would have been an extremely bad sight, as the UK already had to deal with a cruel policeman attack. People who wanted to honor poor Sarah were fined, handcuffed, and taken to court. Since this tragedy was so significant, all of that seemed like overkill. People merely desired to be together. Later, the British government said that it will invest $25 million on better city lighting and even more CCTV cameras. Wayne wasn't particularly deterred by being caught on camera, although it did aid in the capture. Another significant component in locating him and fooling him was the availability of cell phone reception. Thanks to the phone he was carrying, he was caught lying so many times. Amazing how so many thieves overlooked that. Maybe Wayne isn't the most intelligent murderer after all. He was, however, unquestionably one of the most disturbed individuals I have come across. After all he had done to poor Sarah, he acted as though he had a family and made a call to a veterinarian for his dog.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could book my dog in for the vet so I can have a discussion about issues, please. It's Couzens, Couzens. we think she's suffering from like separation anxiety, and she just barks and howls constantly all day. But obviously, when we're there, and then when we come home, she's like so excited and worked up that she kind of wheezes and she's shaking. But where she jumps up and she's got longer claws, she like scratches the kids, she scratches us. Not all by accident, but we're just wondering. We have read online about if it gets to quite a bad degree of separation anxiety, then potential medications like try and calm her down. So that's what we want to talk to the vet about, really, and a way forward with it.
If anyone needs a psychiatrist and medication, it's probably not the dog. The phone call to the veterinarian seems so silly and unremarkable. You know? That's what makes this situation so terrifying to me. He was such a simple person. The kindest word I could ever call him is basic. The Met Police ultimately began removing all the bad apples like Wayne in April 2023 after having made promises to do so earlier. The Met Police Chief also claims that they are revamping their hiring procedure. Any applicants with convictions beyond the most trivial matters or crimes committed as a young person are no longer accepted for employment. Therefore, if a person is already recognized for being creepy, there should be no way for them to get close to a badge, a weapon, or that kind of authority to stop anybody they want. It's unsettling to consider that there still may be shady police officers out there who are eager to abuse their position. The fact that he was a known creep and he had been driving around without any clothes at a McDonald's super classy, by the way, didn't stop him from getting that power. But would Sarah finally get justice for everything that the monster had done to her? He received a fair hearing despite the fact that UK courts rarely record proceedings, even though it took him until the second day to admit to killing Sarah. Later, he began admitting regret for what he had done to her. It's quite difficult to hear, but Sarah's mother said this in her impact statement. She lost her life because Wayne Couzens wanted to satisfy his perverted desires. How could he value a human life so cheaply? He treated my daughter as if she was nothing and disposed of her as if she was rubbish. It was so clear that Wayne was responsible for this. The judge described his actions as warped, selfish, and cruel. Additionally, her parents forced Wayne to look at them when they talked during the impact statements. Sarah was helpless to defend herself since she was shackled and no one could come to her rescue. She spent her final moments on Earth, surrounded by the worst of humanity. Burning her body was the ultimate insult, and it meant that he would never be able to see her precious face again or say goodbye, said the mother, who was devastated by what he had done. The horrific murder of my daughter, Sarah, is on my thoughts constantly and will be for the rest of my life, and I am in excruciating pain over it, says Sarah's father. You have purposefully and premeditatedly prevented me from being able to care for my child and fix everything, which is what a father wants to do. Everything about this is so heartbreaking that I find it unbearable. But you'll definitely be glad to hear Wayne's final sentence, and I do mean final. The judge was happy to throw the book at this monster. Wayne just didn't seem remotely sorry for what he'd done. Other from getting caught, of course. In court, Wayne had only displayed self-pity and attempts to avoid or minimize the proper consequences of what you have done, the judge said. Wayne received a whole life order, which is a highly rare punishment in the UK as a result. It implies that he will never be released from prison again, ever. He is not eligible for parole and is not allowed to appeal his sentence. He won't be let free once more unless King Charles grants him something like a royal pardon, and I reckon that's highly unlikely, don't you? To be really honest, it's a huge comfort to know that he won't be leaving. Wayne Couzens should never be permitted to go outside again because he is ill and horrible. He was sentenced for exposing himself while performing his job in March 2023. The additional 19 months were due to this. Maybe just to be sure. It's too bad that it wasn't done earlier, and I'm hoping that her family can start to heal. The frightening part, in my opinion, is that Sarah was merely in the wrong location at the wrong time. His victim could have been anyone. So be careful out there, guys. What do you think about this twisted case? Why wasn't Wayne stopped sooner? Share your ideas in the comments area below.